Most traders think the reason they're still losing is because they don't know enough yet. So they keep watching more videos, learning more concepts, adding more confirmations, more strategies, and you name it. But honestly, I think for a lot of traders, that's actually the thing making their trading worse. Because at some point, too much information start destroying decision making. And most traders don't even realize it's happening to them. So if you just started trading or you've already been trading for a long time, let me show you what is actually happening and where you could potentially find yourself if you don't understand the importance of what I'm talking to you now. So let's start with a very simple explanation. Say that we have a specific strategy that we're using, a simple trend following strategy. Now, if you started trading or you've already been trading using a specific concept that is actually teaching you to take a trade from this specific POY, right? What happens is that you start learning everything related to the system. So you understand the entry criteria, you understand the risk management, you understand the whole system itself. But for some reason, something with within the strategy is not giving you clarity. It's actually frustrating you. Maybe sometimes you do take a loss and you don't even know why have you taken that loss for. Or maybe there are some other stuff or part of the strategy that is not giving you that satisfaction. So then what happened? The next thinking, the logical thinking you do is that you jump for another strategy or you start looking around for another system. Okay. Now what happens is that the system that you're looking for at one point might happen that the approach that they're using can be based on a different angle from where you're coming from. So what I mean is that say your expectation from your first strategy is to go higher, right? Based on a simple trend following strategy, what you're learning next from someone else, it might be something that they're teaching you to take a trade from here. Why? Maybe because we have, say, some type of liquidity grab, right? So if you guys been watching all this liquidity strategy, some people be telling you, okay, take this because this is better. Now, you start watching this, you see this as a fancy concept, and you start implementing that. However, what you forget is that you're coming from a strategy that you spend a lot of energy and time before, a lot of effort. And from the moment now that you start using this system, what's going to happen is that this system and this system, both of them, they're going to start clashing with each other. Because a part of yourself, every time you're taking a setup from here, will tell you, oh no, don't do this because on the previous system, you had something different over here. Well, this one, it's not like this. But then on the other hand, you will find yourself in a situation where both of the analysis you're doing are kind of contradicting each other. And that's the moment where many traders start getting confused because they've been changing strategies so many times, right? That when they face themselves in such situation, now they don't know what to do anymore. And I had so many traders and students, and when I did a one-to-one, coming to me and telling me, hey, Choshi, I don't understand why when I try to go for a buy, I see price actually screaming that we should be going down. So I get lost and I get stuck in the middle because I don't know what to do next. Well, guys, this is one of the major reasons that I've been literally explaining to you for the last 5 minutes. So how do you tackle that? Okay, what are the steps that you should be taking? Because you see, what even gets worse is that after you find yourself in such situation, you still keep going up to the ladder, and what you do is that you literally try to get for the next, sorry, hold on, let me mark this up over here. You start getting for the next system. So you start looking for the next strategy. And guess what? Maybe this strategy now, it revolves around something completely different that forces you to take a setup somewhere in the middle of the trend, right? So now, over time, as you start strategy hopping from one system to another one, you start bringing with you some breadcrumbs from your prior systems. You see, so that's why actually watching more videos, starting more concepts, starting more strategy is not going to help you over long term. It's going to actually make things even worse for you. Okay, so what's going to happen is that as you keep doing this, right, at one point, instead of seeing some type of growth on your system or on yourself, you're actually going to start like this. You go up, right? Maybe this was the first strategy you learned, and then later on, that is literally what is going to happen to yourself. You guys understand what I'm trying to say? So this is very, very important. So now the real question is, how are we going to tackle this? How are we going to be able to choose something, right, and continuously try to develop around that? So first thing first, let me remove this drawing. So I'm going to give you some tips, guys. Obviously, to explain you concept like this, I do very well within my one-to-one session because it takes very long, at least more than an hour. But I'm going to do my best to explain it to you and give you some hints so you guys can work with that. And I'm sure that will help you a lot. So let's start with this. Say that this is your system. This is what you're trading. So let's go from here. Now, As soon as you are doing something and you find yourself uncomfortable with some part of the plan, because I understand that each strategy has their own view and own confirmation, own rules, own system. But as soon as you find something, let's say something within the entry criteria that you don't like it at all, right? It doesn't give you pleasure because maybe it's complex to understand, maybe it's too subjective, maybe it's not aligning pretty well with what you're doing. What you could potentially do if you want to learn more is that every time you see some other system, you need to see how much of that system is actually closely aligned with what you already started doing. Because say that from your system, you have, I don't know, let's say 5 steps, all right? And now out of the 5 steps, you only find yourself comfortable with 4. And one of them, right, is negative. So in this case, let's say the entry criteria is not suitable for you. What you do when you try to see different other concepts of theory is that you try to still keep the base like this, but this time, instead of changing the whole strategy because this is not giving you confidence or because you're taking a lot of losses, you try to see if there is something that can be implemented on the overall system, right? So the one that you're actually comfortable with. Now, you have to bear in mind something very important. And this is something that nobody will tell you and nobody even talks about it. Trading is very surgical. What I mean is that if you have a system with 5 steps, somebody's giving you and handing you over that system, it means that, of course, I mean, it's expected to have someone already tested the system over years, backed by data and solid information, but it means that the way the system has been structured, it meant to succeed, right? So if you change a variable, you have to be careful that that variable is not going to ruin the whole system itself. So what I mean is that if you do an entry model that has nothing to do with the other 4 steps, they're gonna destroy your trading. But if you do change your entry model, that's not having a major impact on the other 4 steps, then at that point you can carry on progressing with them. Okay, this is just simple one of the approach you can use. But most importantly, your aim is always to make sure that whenever you try to change your system because you're not comfortable with it, is to gradually replace what you're not comfortable with. So that is the biggest takeaway from this video. Do not hop strategy to strategy like we did over here. What you do instead is that you try to pick what you're not comfortable with and you just try to change that. Only that one factor. That is very, very important. Okay, keeping in mind that there are 2 outcomes that can happen. This one factor can either ruin your other 4 steps that you're comfortable with, so you have to be very cautious on that, or it can actually improve it and make your 5th model complete to say to yourself, okay, this is exactly what I'm doing now. All right, so there is so much more that I need to tell you guys, and as I said, I usually explain this stuff very well with my one-to-one session, but right now this is a big takeaway that I can give it to you because I see so many traders struggling so much with that. They start hopping from strategy to strategy, system to system all the time, but they don't understand that trading is a surgical method, is a surgical approach that you should be using all the time in the market. Because if you don't do, what's gonna happen is that you're gonna start losing your confidence level. You're gonna start losing your mental health. So, because the biggest takeaway is that the perception of traders are completely different. You have to remember that every time you see market doing this and this, that means that somewhere around the world is probably selling when you're trying probably to buy. So that means that somewhere around the world is probably pushing or pressing from a sell side perspective with some type of system that is going to clash with the system they're using. Right? And that is all is about trading. Because what people fail to understand is that, for example, one of the most unknown concept is, I don't know, maybe ICT or a smart money concept, right? They're like literally valuable out there, everybody talking about it whatsoever. Now, if this system is telling you to do something after X, Y, and Z factor, right? That doesn't mean that the whole world is going to do that. That means that there is going to be a counterpart somewhere around the world that is using, I don't know, maybe support or resistance, or maybe some type of indicator or whatever. There is a cluster of traders that are pushing against that system. Okay, so imagine now finding yourself learning both. Guys, you need to think rationally. That's very, very important, because if you don't put things in perspective from a rational point of view, you will always find yourself getting lost every time you're changing strategy. And then at that point, you don't understand what actually is happening. And that's why I really wanted to make this video, to make you understand that every time you're doing this kind of stuff, you need to know how to filter it. And one of the methods I just gave it to you is just based on taking each single component and making sure that you filter out properly. If you want to learn more about these type of things, I highly invite you guys to join my live sessions. And if you want to have access to my daily forecast, which I do every single day for my community, the link is in bio. And right now I only got 20 spaces left for anyone interested to join. This being said, I'll see you to the next one.